Hi, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to be looking at documentation driven development, or DocDD as I like to call it, and a few approaches. One approach that I've been using a lot lately that'll be helpful for a lot of folks is converting Figma designs into Next.js application, like adding a design to an application, existing application from Figma using their MCP support. I've been having really good success with that, and I'll show how that works. And I'm going to combine that with this concept I've been calling DocDD pipelines. And what a DocDD pipeline is when you look at, if you look at my screen, let me make sure, let me share my screen. So, what a DocDD pipeline is if you look at my screen, we've got all these tabs here, and I'm trying to build out this view for a real project. This is for a application for equestrian sports or horse shows, as probably you've heard of it. And it's a fairly complex application. And this design here is just for the rider to manage after they've registered for an event. So it's just an absolutely massive application with a lot of different types of users. And so I'm trying to help us get caught up on this project because as we've gone through the design process, there's just been a really healthy design sessions, and that's resulted in a little bit of scope creep around what all needs to get built. And so I just am trying to apply some of these AI techniques to kind of get the team caught up. And so what I've been doing is coming through and replicating each of these tabs, and I'm using the same process when I replicate each tab. So the process is that the first thing we're going to do is just use the MCP to create and try to make an exact copy of the Figma design in React and Next.js and Tailwind and ShadCN, but completely like mocked with the data and just a dumb view. Like it doesn't connect to the API. The reason you do that is because the more things you give the API to do, the AI to do, the more likely it is to get confused. The more likely you are to kind of just chase your tail a little bit and have a hard time getting things done. So then once we get the view to where it looks like the real app, then we're going to go ahead and wire it up to, I've created one user, one writer who's registered for an event, and we're just going to wire it up to the live data and just see what it looks like. And then there's just a ton of data. Like it could take 30 minutes or an hour to go through and fill in all the information for an event, and then the riders and the horses and all these different riders. So it's very time consuming. So the next step of what I do after I've got it wired to the data is I'm having the AI just seed out some data for a separate user in event, and then that data has a more clear, that data will represent the UI really well. So if you look over here, this is the app, and I've done that exact process I've talked about for this uh, event that is like a dummy one. So the GUID or ID is like all A's. For like a real one, you get more of an actual proper GUID. And if you look at the real one, I don't have all the fee data here, but I've for the one that I'm having it create seed data for me, so I don't have to create all that data. We've got plenty of payment information, and if you look at it, this here is matching the actual design really well. The zoom level is different, so it might show a little different, but here it is with a similar zoom level. And you can see it's done a wonderful job of matching everything up. Pardon me. And this is within the context of a much larger application that's been under development for over 6 months now. And so what I want to do is I want to show you how to use these concepts, the Figma MCP and the DocDD pipelines, to apply that same process, UX mocked up, wired to live data, and then we're going to add seed data to see it in a more fleshed out way. And we're going to try and do that to one of the tabs that isn't done yet. And the pipeline concept is because we're doing the same AI workflow on every tab. And so you'll find yourself in that position, or at least I do a lot when I'm coding. And so that's where this pipeline concept comes up. And I'll show you how I'm doing that. So we did the fees last. So next up, let's take a look at the tickets. The tickets looks like it's got enough complexity in it to be interesting. You've got two levels there. I haven't added the menus yet or anything like that, but this one should go pretty quick. And so it'd be a good example of us going from not having anything for tickets to, like I said, in the real app, we'll see it pop up here, but it'll be like fees where there's not really anything connected to it when we have live data. And then once we get it connected, we'll first get it to where it looks just like this with dummy data. that is in the UI itself, just mock JSON. Then we'll go ahead and wire it up to live data. We may or may not see any information after that happens. Then I'll have the AI seed enough data to see something very similar to here, and we'll see that on this AAAA event. So let's go ahead and dive right in. If you're not familiar with documentation-driven development, I will include a link to a primary video there where you can get some more information about doc-driven development. It's kind of out of the scope of this particular topic, but I am going to cover a little bit of the documentation-driven development or DocDD concepts that I'm using here. In DocDD, the whole concept revolves around the idea that you treat your AI agent like a temp employee. And the reason you do that is because the AI agents, the more questions you ask them, the more things you ask them to do, they get out of the smart zone and into like the dumb zone, is one way of calling it. What that means is they just hallucinate, and they'll hallucinate more the more that they have in context. So the way I like thinking about it is treat it like it's an employee, a temp employee, that at any moment you can fire them or send them home, however you want to think about it, and get a fresh one to take over the work. And then once you do that, once you shut down an AI session and start up a new one, your quality is going to increase, right? But you have to onboard this new employee is how you can think about it. So how do you onboard an AI agent? Well, we use context management skill for that, which is the three core skills. Context management is the first one. And so that's what we'll be looking at in this particular video, is how we use context management for that. So the way we do it, there are three things you have to do as part of context management. You have to let the agent know what to build, how to build it, and how to know it's done, which is optional but helpful. That'll allow it to do more work autonomously. So what I do is I create a docs folder, because this is documentation-driven development, and I'll create best practices. And all of these documents will evolve over time. See this three core skills? The third one is evolving processes. You want to constantly update your best practices documents, because they are the processes that your AI agents are going to use. So what we have in here is we have one best practice for how to write user stories and tasks. And so those are going to go in this tasks folder here, which is called out in this document. And we are working on the writer manage event self-register epic. What that is it's a writer and they're registering for an event and managing the event. And then within each folder, you're going to have an epic file, and that epic file is going to contain all of the user stories that need to happen to complete that particular epic. If there isn't a lot of complexity, instead of having a folder with an epic with a bunch of stories, you could just have task and then just have a user story file there. That's all part of our process. And then what we do is whenever we start a task, whenever we have a new requirement, I'll put all of the metadata about a requirement into this requirements folder. So for this writer event manage, I put the call transcripts from when we discussed these things. I put in the mockups from the Figma that we were looking at. If I had the MCP going, I probably could have just used the MCP to introspect. And in fact, I went back after the fact and I did do that. And so then that's how I ended up creating this epic here. And as you can see, I've knocked out the overview, the participants, and the fees, which I just showed you those views. And these rows here, that's where we're getting into the DocDD pipeline, because we're going to do the same process for each one of these tabs. And like I said, next up, we're going to try tickets. It says next on the classes, but the classes is a little too simple. So I'm going to tell it, let's do the tickets next, because it'll make a better example. And the way we do that is once the story is created, whenever we are working a feature, this is the AI agent workflow best practices. And what the workflow best practices does is it tells it our core process of how to work a workflow. So I'm going to say, following these AI agent task workflow best practices, I want to work on this story here. And it's going to come in and it's going to look at this core process, which is get the next task, ask clarifying questions if needed, code the task. Once you feel like you're done, then you'll ask me to verify the work. Once I've verified the work, you'll update the status of our task, which is where you're seeing things like these. When you're seeing these check boxes and things like that, that's the agent coming through and updating its status. And then once it's done with that, it'll commit the changes before it moves on to the next task, and then it gives us a continuation prompt that allows us to continue in the next session. So let's go ahead and look at see how that would work for doing the tickets part of our application. So I just finished doing the payments, I think it was. So now what I can tell it, I use WhisperFlow, which is an AI speech to text that allows me to just talk to the AI. I suggest you check it out. It's very good. So I'm going to talk to the AI now and explain it what we want to do. Give me a continuation prompt to continue this work. I'd like to work on the ticket feature next, or ticket user story in our Epic. So I could have just cleared my contacts and typed in the information that was needed, but I usually just have it give me a continuation prompt. It's pretty good at doing that over time. And I use Claude Code, but there's a ton of good agents out there. I've just settled on Claude Code for a good bit, and I use their Max, which at the time of this video is like $200 a month, and you get plenty of tokens. So here's our continuation prompt. It's saying we're going to work on tickets next. And so I'll just copy this continuation prompt. And if you look at the top of the continuation prompt, it gives the epic file, it gives the story file, and it should give the AI best practices. Here it is. Follow the mock first approach from blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's what we need. So what we're going to do is when I showed you the process just now, we fire the temp employee, right? And then we onboard them. So what that means in Claude Code is we are going to clear our context. That gives us a new agent. So this agent has no idea what we're working on or anything about our code except for the things that are in the claude.md file. So now I'm going to give it our continuation prompt. When I do that, something weird happened there. Let me try that again. Okay, so I've cleared the context. So now that we have a fresh agent that can think clearly, I give it the continuation prompt. And so now it's going and it's looking at our continuation prompt. And what that is the context management skill. Here we're keeping our context as small as possible. And while it looks like I had some changes that hadn't been committed, it's committing those. While it's doing that, I can show you as far as the context management and keeping things as small as possible. What I did recently is I started breaking out best practices for each of the types of development activities you might be doing in a story. We might be doing UX components. We might be doing API work. We might be creating stories like product owner. And so for each of those, we have a best practice document, but we're letting the agent know only pull those in if you need them. Otherwise, you'll have your context bigger than it needs to be, which makes your agent less smart. Okay, so now what it's doing, it's using the linear MCP. I can show you what the MCPs look like while it's doing that in Claude. So in Claude, you type the MCP command, and that will show you all the ones that are available. I'm using Atlassian on some projects for my project management, Linear on some projects for project management. Puppeteer allows it to run the browser and see the debug information and things. And so that's helpful sometimes. I don't use it that much, but it is helpful when I need it. And then the Figma one is if you have your designs in Figma. And the way the Figma MCP works is a little bit fidgety. And so what has to happen is in Figma, you have to have your Figma design in a very specific way for it to work. For one, you have to have it in a workspace with an account that has high enough permissions. I'm using a professional account at the time of this video. And I had to make a copy of the design because my designer is in a different workspace for his company and he invited me as a guest. And so because of that, I can't use the MCP in his account because I don't have a high enough account. What I did is I made a copy of his version of the design, saved it locally, opened it, added it to my workspace, and put it in a project in my workspace where I have a professional account and I have high enough permissions. And then once I did that, you open the design in this view where it's the raw design, not the, I don't know the exact language. This is where you're kind of previewing and you can click around. It's like the preview environment, I guess. And this is where you're more working on things. And when you're in this view on a Mac, you can go into developer mode by pushing Shift D. So I just turned it on and off. using Shift D. And see, if you're in developer mode, it'll look very developer centric on the side, and you'll see an MCP pane. If again you have that ability, in other words, your account is a high enough level, and then there'll be a green button that says Enable MCP Server. What that does is it creates a local server that your agent can call to get information from. And then the next thing you have to do is you find the design you're working on, because it can't look at everything and that would be too big for the context. And so we were going to do, I think we said tickets. And so I would pick the tickets design, which is here, and this will give us the basic design, but all of these are collapsed here. So we'll have to pick the expanded design to do that part. So right now we have the collapsed one selected. And then if we come back, we'll probably see the tickets. Looks like it's here. No, where's it at? Here's the tickets. So then after we do the collapsed, we'll select this one and do the expanded. And if I scroll out, you'll see that when I go over that, it shows a line to what see how that line goes up there? That goes to the one that we selected here. So now if you look, get screenshots. So I'd already did some Figma calls. This Figma desktop. I'm a little nervous it got the wrong screen. Let me double check. Did you get the correct screen from Figma? I don't know if I had it selected yet. Can you make sure you have the correct screen before you do the code? So I'm having it double check on which screen it got from. So it's getting the screenshot again from Figma desktop. So it should get a screenshot, but it should also, I forget what the other one's called. Get screenshot, because you don't want it to just get design context. So that'll get it to where it gets the styles and all that stuff just right. Okay, there's a get metadata call, get design context. Okay, tickets with 8 items. Yeah, 4 tickets and 4 tickets, 8 items. Yep. Okay, now it's starting to write the code. Now it just did created a tickets tab component. And it's updating the page to have that as not just a coming soon, but an actual page. Couldn't possibly be ready. Maybe it is. So this is our actual real one, or the one I entered manually is probably a better way to describe it. Oh, look at that. So it looks like it pretty much one-shotted it. That's pretty cool. Okay. So now, and this looks great. I don't want you to think that this has been going this well the whole time. I had to vibe a lot on this page to get, let me do one that has on this page here to get all these icons and everything correct. I had to go in and say that doesn't have a border. This, like, it took a lot of iterating, but after I did that, then I went in and I asked it to review and help me create a best practice for the UX that would make these things go faster. So we refactored and we moved to semantic styles. Before it had the colors in line. And I just got the code more organized in a way that made it easier for future. See, it's showing the good and bad practices here. See, we're using semantic tokens there. And before it was doing this kind of stuff where it was calling out the specific details. And so because I put that infrastructure work in and creating my documentation base, which is a fundamental of doc-driven development, that's why we were able to one-shot it here. And get to where we have the whole thing pretty much ready to go there. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll let it, as part of the process, it runs some code quality commands. It's running a like PM validate right now. We'll do like type checking and what happened? So it'll do like type checking and static code analysis type stuff. I've reviewed the design and it looks accurate to me. Consider it verified. Get that prompt ready to go for when it's done with the validation. You can see if you use Claude Code, you can do Control O, I think it is, and yeah, you can see see it working, see the sausage being made, so to speak. Okay, so validation passed. Let me update the progress. It may have done the mock data, even though it's supposed to take it one step at a time. Let's take a look. So let's clear this, and then we'll go to tickets. Yeah. So there's no calls going to the AI, so it's still mocked right now. So I'll tell it that the design is verified, and see, it's telling me to let it know if it doesn't match the design, but it did a great job, so we'll just let it know it's matched up. Okay. So now what it's doing is the design has been verified. So it's going to check Hasura metadata to understand available tickets relationship. It keeps missing this step. It's supposed to confirm the schema with Hasura. Um, are you following the process? Did you confirm the schema with Hasura through the API before you were writing the code? We're using Hasura for as a layer over Postgres, and what it does is it gives you a a GraphQL API essentially with no code, which is fantastic. And GraphQL allows you to query the schema and say, what do you have? Um, so I don't know why it keeps missing that step of the process. And that's what your job is when you're doing DocDD and AI accelerated development, is to make sure that the agent is following the process, which it won't. And it's a little frustrating, but it gets better. And you can ask it, why did you not follow that? How can we improve our docs to do that? And when you do that, that's getting into the DocDD concept of evolving processes. And then as you continue to evolve processes, you're going to accelerate your ability to validate things, which is what I've been doing, is getting it to where, well, that took a really long time. I had to review a lot of stuff. How do we make this quicker? Right. So those are the three core skills as I see them. So now what it's doing is it's curling the GraphQL to get the exact schema. And so last time it did like it did just now, and it tried to just kind of guess at what it thought the code needed to be for the schema. Well, it got those guesses wrong over and over again. So I'm accelerating my process with it by knowing that it makes that kind of mistake, right? So now I've asked it to, don't guess, go ahead and just get the schema and see, like it's called here, and it's getting back exactly what these objects, what the properties are, what they're named. And so it won't have to keep trying different stuff and guessing and missing. Query structure verified. Now let me add the code. Now we might get a one shot on this one too. Okay, it says it's wired to live data now. So now if we refresh this page, we probably should see nothing, because that's the one where you have to enter everything in manually. That makes me a little suspicious. Let's go ahead and see what happens over here. There's our two calls. It's loading. Came back with our 4 tickets. So then let's figure out why it's giving us a result. Oh, you know what it does? It did this last time. Um, if it doesn't get data back, it'll optionally return the mock data, which I don't like that it does that. And I think I've asked it not to do that. But I might need to update my best practices based on that. But I'm pretty sure if we clear out the network tab here and refresh, we'll clear it one more time, because it doesn't. I probably need to add deep linking so it keeps keeps you on the tab you're on. So we'll go to tickets now. I'll let that finish loading. That's interesting. Maybe I did have tickets, but why are there 4? It's exactly the same. So that makes me a little suspicious. We can ask it. It looks like it's working, and it's making the call. I'm seeing the same data in both of my accounts I'm testing with. I'm going to do this and copy this. You get a very small ability to respond there. So I'm going to come over here and do it. So this is the account where I have manually created the test data, and there's just not a lot of event information, and I would expect it doesn't have tickets, but it's showing the exact same tickets as the other account. This is the other account that we're driving with seed data, which is showing 4 tickets. And so I would expect it would not be showing any tickets. I might assume that you're showing the mock data from the UI, because the API call doesn't return anything because we haven't seen the data yet, but please advise. So then we'll grab the URL. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. It's still mocking it in the UI. But see, the next step is wired to live GraphQL data. Or maybe this is a step that's in progress right now. Okay. You're exactly right. Both registrations are showing mock data because neither has actual ticket data in the database. We haven't seeded any fallback logic. Okay. I want you to remove the fallback logic and wire up the live data. And then at this point, I won't do it on the video because it just in the interest of time. But what I'll do is ask it to update the process to say not to use that fallback approach going forward. Um, that way, when we switch from mock to live data, it's not going to still show the mock data if it doesn't get live data back, which I don't know when that pattern would be valuable. Okay, so remove the fallback data. So we should now see that both of these, okay. Go ahead and add the seed data. Add the seed data and then run the seed script to push the data to the database. Keeps missing the first thing I'm saying. Okay. While it's doing that, we can take a look over here. See, there's no tickets now, and that would be on both sides. Okay. But it did make the call. It just got no results back. And so now what it's doing, it's going to update. This is our seed data file, my events design verification seed file. Uh-oh. I should have asked for a continuation prompt. Let me see if it's not too late. Can you give me a continuation prompt? We're out of context. We might get lucky. If we don't, it's going to do compaction. And with Claude, if you do a full compaction, it takes a little while. We missed it. So it's compacting. Okay, so it finished compacting and now it's updating the seed data. It's continuing. So ideally, I probably should update my process document. What it's not doing that I'd want it to do is if you look at it should follow our process for each of these vertical lanes. So after it gets the mock done, it should commit and give us a continuation prompt. And then after it gets the data done, commit, continuation prompt, etc. And then that allows us to keep our context window managed really well. But what it's doing is it's doing for each row, which is a full tab. And so I brought in the pipeline concept, but I haven't really fine tuned the process enough yet. So that's something I'll keep working on. And I don't want to be overly prescriptive. If you're using these approaches, really, your flavor is going to be different, you know. So, but I have no doubt that if you do start using these processes, that you will eventually find yourself where you're doing like this pipeline approach, where you're like, well, I've got to create all these tests for all these different SQL Postgres functions, and so I'm going to use the same process, and then you'll end up creating something like this pipeline approach, right? And so really, the idea is more about um, sharing how you create documentation driven flows and just how you keep evolving them. That's how you make them good. Okay, so now we're running the seed script. Looks like it found an issue with the schema, even though we tried to get it to check first. Okay, we're rerunning the seed. Okay, it looks like the seeding might have worked. Let's check. This is our event that should have data now. Go ahead and clear this out. And obviously, I need to work on deep linking to the tabs and caching response. There's a lot of this app is not ready for prime time. So if you're an experienced dev, I'm definitely going to be making a lot of improvements around caching and deep linking and things. So now we're getting our data back. This is on the seeded writer registration, and then on the non-seeded, we should see that we're not getting any data because I didn't go through and create all the tickets and I just, as I mentioned, it takes a lot of effort to fill out all that stuff. Yeah, and so looks good. This looks great. I think it matches the design quite well there. Um, so if we come over and look at the actual, yeah, wait a minute. The tickets should have an image. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll go over here and select, I think this is it here, the tickets one that has the images. So that's one difference. Let's see if there's any others. I think other than that, it's nailed it. It's doing some cleanup over here. We've only got 9% of context left. So what I'll do is ask it to give me a continuation prompt for the images fix. We are running low on context. Give me a continuation prompt. And when we restart, what I want to do is have the agent check the MCP because the design is missing the ticket images that go on each of the ticket rows. Okay, here's our continuation prompt. So this will allow us to get a nice fresh context and get our agent out of the dumb zone and into the smart zone. Okay, so now it's attempting to get the design context. And as I mentioned before, you have to make sure you select the correct thing in your Figma. And so it's hitting some context limits because the amount of data that's getting sent across is too large. But what it does is it writes it to a file and it starts reading out the pieces it needs. Okay, so starting to make the code updates. Okay, so making a number of updates. Okay, now it's claiming we should have our images. There we go. Now, the final app is going to load the images into, where are we storing images? Probably S3. Usually we use Supabase and we store them there. So I need to figure out where we're storing images, but the final app will load the images into wherever we're storing images. And it looks like the style of that is not correct. Um, so I'm going to keep vibing on that to get the style correct. And looks like there's some issues with being able to scroll all the way down, but I think that'll cover it for this episode. It shows all the concepts I was hoping to share with you. So the main thing is how to use the MCP for linear in case you get into that, and then how to use a DocDD pipeline for when you have a number of things that you are going to do the same process and pattern on, and then just you know reiterating some of the core concepts around what the core skills are when you're using DocDD, which is context management, accelerating velocity, involving processes, which is all ties into this whole pipeline concept. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider liking, subscribing, mining, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for joining.